Hello, everyone, and hello, Nate.
Hey, Greg. Hello, all the people out there on the internet. We're excited to talk birds to you today. I'm Nate Swick. That's Greg Neise. I have my mic on somewhere, and I got to turn it off if I find out where it is. I have no idea. Hold on. Oh, my God. All right, here it is. Sorry.
This is what happens when you go gallivanting all about the hemisphere.
Isn't that the fact? I've been sick for like the last 5 days. I ate something in Colombia that made me not feel good, and I'm only just now coming back out of it. And folks, nothing, not even a messed up stomach could keep me away from What's This Bird. Although last week I was gone. I apologize. It was great. I saw a lot of cool birds.
That is some dedication and fortitude.
Dedication. That's how much
intestinal fortitude, one might say.
To all 12 of you. It's more than 12. But hey, everybody.
So you were in Colombia.
I was speaking at the wonderful Manizales Bird Fair, which is in the Central Andes. I gave a talk in English, amongst all the other Spanish-speaking presentations. I wasn't the only American there that gave a talk in English, so it wasn't so bad. But yeah, it was great. Got to do some birding in the area. Got to meet a lot of really fantastic Colombian birders and people from around South America who are doing really interesting bird work. It was a wonderful time. Lots of hummingbirds. Saw some ant pittas. What you name it. I stayed a few days extra so I could go to this Dañadoras in the eastern Andes to see the toucan barbets. And I'm telling you, Greg, toucan barbet is a heck of a bird. It is a beast, and I'm glad I saw it, even though I was a little under the weather while I was seeing it.
Well,
what a bird!
You got a bird right through the grebe.
That's right. You got to sometimes. And hey, I will say that if you are feeling under the weather in a Latin American country, there is not a whole lot that is better than sitting at a feeder and watching, a dozen hummingbirds and toucan barbets and tanagers of all times just coming in. It's if you're sick, that's the way to bird. If you're not sick, that's the way to bird. But it's especially nice if you're sick.
So, before we get into it, man, what a week for Texas.
Oh, yeah. Wild.
Holy moly.
It's been quite a week for birding in general, man. I think people have.
I tell you what, November.
Everyone's turned to 11, turned to 12 here.
November has come in with a bang.
Yeah, the Rio Grande Valley Birding Festival last week had quite the run of birds. Including ones that have been sticking around for like the last month, like golden crowned warblers and blue buntings and things like that. In a normal year, those would be super exciting, but this year,
one of those would be like the reason, like that that'd be the memory. I mean, I remember the Amazon kingfisher, and
yeah, no doubt.
This was like 6 Amazon kingfishers.
The 1 year I went to Rio Grande Birding Festival, was it last year? It was last year. There were no rare birds seen. So my not showing up, I think, is what caused all these rare birds to be seen. You're welcome.
Oh, I guarantee that it's because I wasn't there.
I've never seen. It was never like that. The best bird they had when I was there was fork-tailed flycatcher, which is a good bird. But
that is a good bird.
It ain't a bare-throated tiger heron, Greg. It's not 2 different roadside hawks. It's not an AVA potential first record, pending acceptance by the Texas Bird Records Committee. Cattle tyrant, one of the great bird names of all time.
Yeah, I mean, I have stood on those bluffs at Santa Margarita Ranch, which is one of the best birding experiences in the ABA area. If you haven't been, make the effort if you can to get down there, and it's not easy.
That's enough. Let's not get greedy.
It's not easy, but man, standing up on those bluffs and watching the birds come out and watching birds fly up and down the river, which is how they got that tiger heron. And holy mackerel, Alex Lamoureux and crew who went down there and spent days looking for it and found it yesterday.
Oh, did they find it again? I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, they refound it yesterday. That's amazing.
At a publicly accessible spot, or still at Santa Margarita?
It's at Santa Margarita.
Yeah. It's still hanging around. Maybe it'll move up and down the river.
Yeah. So, anyways, you want to talk about what we do here before we get into it?
Yeah, still trying to figure out how I can get to the editing function of the stupid video on Facebook. But we'll move past that. I'll let you vamp for a while I do that. But first, we'll talk a little bit about what we do here. The What's This Bird is a biweekly-ish program from the American Birding Association. The ABA hosts a bunch of we host a bunch of Facebook groups for various purposes. One of which is to help people identify birds. It's called What's This Bird. People can take photos of whatever birds they see, whether they're out birding, birds that are at their feeders, and they send them in on our friendly members and admins and all the people who make that group run will help you identify the bird pretty quickly. And every once in a while, we see some interesting stuff pop up from time to time. There's definitely an annual cycle to the birds that we see, an expected annual cycle to the birds that we see in that group. The same sorts of identification concerns come up every single year, and we sort of try to anticipate those and talk about them a little bit in our live program. This is for us to talk to you about birds. It's also for you to talk to us about birds as well. So we've got our eyes on the comments on YouTube and on Facebook. If you've got a question, a comment, a story, whatever, please let us know.
Or just want to say hi.
Pause a little bit. Yeah, we're happy to say hi. Who you got? Who you got, Greg? Have we had anyone say hi?
I haven't. I don't know what's on with Facebook here. I haven't seen a single comment in Facebook. I'm watching it though.
Being weird.
Maybe it says
you're out there. We know there's like 12 of you.
Yeah, at least. But anyways, I don't know what's up with Facebook, but maybe we will just jump right into it. Yeah, I see that. I see what you. Well, I see what you just posted there, so it's working at least to some degree.
Right. Right. So we have stuff we want to talk about. You want to talk about because I got to figure this thing out so I can get to.
Chris Ortega, Aaron Maislish, Davina Gentry. Hope I didn't mess that up too badly. Tim Callback, Skulking. Tim, one of our great friends of the ABA. I think we're just going to kind of jump right in here. We're ready to talk some birds. Lately I've been trying to put together a theme. Let's get wet. Whoops. Got ahead of myself there. There we go.
I figured it out. It's because I was on Facebook. Oh, we got a lot of there they are. It's because I was on Facebook as my own account and not as the American Birding Association. Turns out that matters now.
That will do it.
The more you know. You know what they say. The way
I actually do.
The way to learn.
Because they say it to me all the time.
Hey, folks. Sarah Coffey, Heidi McCulloch, John Anderson, Greg Gilson, watching a feeder, accompanied by Costas Hummingbird in Arizona. Nice place to be. That's the one hummingbird that's the one regularly occurring ABA hummingbird I have not seen. Costas Hummingbird.
We are gonna talk about birds that swim.
Yeah.
Today.
Swimming birds. Let's do swimming birds.
Swimming birds. So what do we got some what do we got here?
We got some geese here, Greg. We've got some white geese with black wing tips and kind of reddish orange bills. Different sizes though. The first three look significantly larger than the one in the back there. Yeah,
we've got I think if you go through your field guide, and I don't think anybody is really gonna confuse geese for too much else.
They're right at the beginning.
They are right at the beginning,
mostly.
And you will see some white geese. Now the biggest problem with white geese is telling the escaped barnyard geese from wild geese, and you'll notice a few things on these geese to the right here, and both of them, all of them actually, but they're kind of compact. They kind of have long wings. You'll see some long tertial feathers drooping down, the black wingtips. The barnyard geese tend to look kind of funky. They don't look like what you see
they look
in the field guides. They look dumpy. They generally don't have the long wings. Sometimes they don't usually have those long tertials.
They aren't nearly as cleanly white as these. Well, I mean, they don't have black wings, I should say.
Exactly. So I think we can get to snow goose for the three birds on the right, but the bird on the left, is that a baby snow goose?
Yeah, definitely. It's a baby. It's following its parents south to Moses Lake, Washington, where it will live with them until it turns into a teenager. No, if you pay attention to your field guide, you'll notice there's a couple different white geese in there. The smaller one is Ross's goose. Was it formerly considered conspecific with snow goose, like cackling was?
Not in my lifetime.
If it was very long ago.
In
any case, it looks very much like a miniature snow goose for the most part. It tends to have a smaller bill. It tends to have a rounder head. It tends to be just about 75%, 60 to 75% the size of a snow goose, which is about what this bird looks like. It looks quite a bit smaller, but sometimes when you can get smaller snow geese, or if the birds are by themselves, it can be kind of difficult to tell. But there are some things that are important to notice here. That little tiny triangular bill looks very dainty, looks almost like a perfect, equilateral triangle for the most part, as compared to kind of the longer isosceles bill of the snow goose. And especially that little mark on the face too. There tends to be some black smudging, especially on younger Ross's geese, around the eye, that is absent in a lot of snow geese. That seems to be, in my experience, a pretty standard field mark, something you're likely to see in a lot of these birds. And the head is rounder. It's just an all over kind of cuter impression. Than kind of the big lanky snow geese that you see. And this isn't an uncommon view. You frequently do find Ross's geese mixed in with snow geese.
Absolutely.
Especially on those big western wildlife refuges where they both will winter in significant numbers.
A couple other points is the base of the bill, which you can see in the snow goose immediately to the right of the Ross's goose, which is the bird trailing to the left. The base of the bill, the feathering is kind of rounded, and on the Ross's goose, it's more or less just straight up and down.
More or less, there is, and I mean, the thing you always worry about with these geese is hybrids, and maybe you want to talk about, maybe you're heading in that direction, Greg. So I don't want to interrupt you, but I did, so I apologize for that.
No, that's okay.
I think that people generally are always looking for the very, very straight border between the bill and the face on a Ross's goose. And when you've got that, you definitely know you have a Ross's goose, because snow goose is pretty significantly curved, a big old C or a D or whatever letter that's curved that you want to put on the face of a snow goose. But there can be a little bit of a curve on the Ross's goose. It's not always like a paper edge straight line. Sometimes there is a little bit of a curve on a bird that you would otherwise consider to be a pure Ross's goose. And sometimes people, anytime they see any bit of incursion into the bill of that face, they'll think hybrid. But I wouldn't every time, especially if everything else is looking pretty clean for Ross's goose. Absolutely,
and we can't see it in this picture, but there's what's called the grin patch on the bill, which is where the upper and lower parts of the bill meet. They're separated to expose the serrations on snow goose, and it's really quite pronounced on snow goose.
Yes, very pronounced.
But on Ross's goose, it's pretty much non-existent. There's a little bit of, like small, everything, there's a little bit of slushiness in there.
Exactly.
But if you see a big old grin patch, that's either a hybrid or a snow goose.
I tend to think hybrids are generally pretty obvious too. Like if it looks mostly like a Ross's goose, I'm generally inclined to call it a Ross's goose. I don't want to play the parsing game on a lot of these birds. When you do see a hybrid, it is usually pretty cleanly a hybrid. Like it'll have a pretty good sized grin patch, though not nearly as large as a snow, and it will have a lot of that, those feathers onto the face. If it's just barely there, or if there's a very small grin patch, people sometimes want to call them hybrids, and I don't think they should. That's just one birder's opinion.
And Ross's goose.
All right, so it's been a while since they were split.
Yeah. So and Ross's goose is one of those birds that.
Thank you, John Anderson.
Was extremely local, and rather rare unless you went to the place where they lived. I remember as a young birder in the 70s going to Tule Lake, California, specifically to see Ross's geese, because that's where almost 100% of the population
Yeah.
wintered there, and breed in the high Arctic. And now, we get flocks of them in Illinois.
Yeah.
They have
We get-
really
we get-
spread.
We get a handful of them out on the East Coast every year too.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say they're common by any means, but if you can usually hear about 2 or 3 every year, mixed in with the flocks of snows, or frequently mixed in with flocks of pond Canada geese. They'll pretty much take in with whatever goose they can find. So
Absolutely.
especially at like suburban parks and whatnot.
Absolutely. Okay, well, these aren't swimming, but they probably were at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this because I love sea watching and lake watching. It's one of my favorite things. And this is a fairly common sight this time of year in a lot of places. We've got we got a bunch of black birds. What do we got here?
Bunch of black birds flying in a string, kind of a loose string, out over what it appears to be the ocean. I don't know of any, except very large lakes would be that.
That's
choppy.
the ocean.
You wouldn't have very large lakes in St. John's, Florida. So a long string of dark birds flying across the ocean in St. John's, Florida. I'm thinking 2 things. I'm thinking perhaps cormorant. They will do this. Double-crested cormorant will do this. Or some of the sea ducks, in particular your scoters, which are your primarily black sea ducks, both of which would be regular, I would think, here this time of year.
Absolutely. Pretty much anywhere. Yeah. I think there you won't see, obviously, in places like Colorado and the Mountain West, you won't see strings of birds like this flying across the ocean. But this is the time for sea ducks. This is when they start to arrive in most of the lower parts of the ABA area, the United States and southern Canada. As Nate said, a long string of heavy-bodied black birds like this is going to be cormorants or scoters for the most part. But these birds have short necks, real heavy bodies, short tails. And so I think we can eliminate cormorants. And we also have a clue in the inset. In the middle of that group in the inset, which is pulled from the picture above, we can see 3 or 4 birds that have pattern on them. They have white bellies and white wing stripes. And that gives us a clue because those are ducks, and we can tell those are ducks. So looking at how they compare to the birds with them, I think we can safely say these are all ducks.
They are ducks, sea ducks. Well, I guess some of them are birds that we would not necessarily consider to be sea ducks. Some of them could be large lake ducks, I guess, depending on where you are. Like this would not be an uncommon sight in the Great Lakes, for instance, I guess, in certain times of year. So,
no, not at all. Although that's a pretty hefty number for the Great Lakes. At least the Western Great Lakes. The further east you go,
maybe more likely. Well, let's talk about the big all black ones first. I think we can pretty safely assume that those are scoters. So we have 2 different groups of scoters. I don't know if 2 different species of scoters that are likely. Well, 2 with all black wings.
Right.
And I'm not entirely comfortable determining which of the scoters these are based on these photos. Some of the birds definitely look kind of large and heavy bodied, which makes me lean surf scoter, which is like a very large kind of lanky scoter, significantly larger you would see if you saw a flock of black scoters and surf scoters flying by. You'd be able to pick out the surf scoters by their size as much as anything else. They tend to be larger and deeper bodied. I would be okay with calling some of those birds surf scoters, but I'm not 100% on that. How about those birds with the white on the wings and the white bellies, though? Greg, I'm interested to hear your take on that. I know the scoters don't have white bellies.
That's true. And just to back up, I think, as Nate said, we can rule out white-winged scoters because they don't have white wing patches.
That helps.
But this is interesting here because we really can't make out, and I can't tell if it's the photograph or it's tough with photographs like this, but there is no white on the face of any of these birds that I can make out.
Yeah, that
And
you can make out. That's the big thing. I mean, I
maybe
imagine
on
there
a
could
couple,
be maybe, yeah, but yeah, I don't know.
but
The quality of the photo seems to be
if they were
not
black
good enough to make that.
scoters, I mean, if they're black scoters, with this many birds, you would get males and females or female types, and the female types show, a pretty noticeable pale
Yeah.
face and dark
Oh,
cap,
for
which
sure. Yeah.
even at this resolution, I think we'd be able to pick out. There's a couple birds at the left end of the inset that maybe I'm seeing that.
Yeah, I mean,
Surf
black
scoters,
scoter would be the most more common of the two. Like, it would
right?
not surprise me if these were all black scoters.
Exactly.
Because that's what I would expect, especially in St. John's, Florida.
Exactly.
Whether or not I can make that distinction based, as you said, on the quality of the photo, I'm not sure. But like, I'm certainly not saying they're not black scoters. I think that's probably more likely than not.
Yeah. So the five birds, sort of in the left hand edge there, we can see the black head, the white belly, and the wing stripe. All that adds up to Scaup.
Yeah, that's what I would guess.
And some of the birds that we might see out there with the scoters, like redheads, don't have the white stripe on the wing. And looking at the
I think
one
you'd
on
want
the
to see more white, like buffalo. I've seen bufflehead out with scoters before.
yeah,
I think they'd be
but
smaller.
buffleheads are so tiny that it would
lot
be
of white,
immediately
lot of white,
obvious.
Yep.
And I think that based on how big these birds appear to be compared to the scoters, and what appears to be a very bright white wing stripe, and that goes past the bend of the wing, as far as we can see. Again, the resolution of this photo is working against us, but I feel fairly comfortable calling these greater Scaup, and especially that they're out on the ocean.
Yeah, I'd have no problem with that. Yeah, that's a bird you frequently see with scoters out on the ocean. I see. I live in North Carolina. These long strings of scoters, large flocks of scoters, 50, 75 birds at once is not an uncommon occurrence, especially this time of year. And Scaup is a very common bird you see mixed in with those scoters. So that seems very plausible.
Yeah. So from Littleton, Colorado.
Yeah, this is an inland scoter situation, Greg. One bird, two birds, a little bit easier. Yeah. So once again, we're looking at what appears to be a fairly significantly sized, almost entirely dark bird on the water. It looks like it's got a duck bill, that kind of broad-based bill that is broad all the way through. As you talked, Greg, earlier.
Yeah,
about,
I know, but I looked at the field guide, and I mean, look at that white cheek patch, and with the tail up in the air. That's a ruddy duck. Yeah. I'm sure it's a ruddy duck.
Okay. Are we? I don't know if you're being serious or not.
I'm not being serious
because it looks like a black scoter to me. You're deadpan. You're too deadpan. Reasonable assumption to think as a ruddy duck, because the classic black and white face, all dark body, big old tail, stiff-tailed duck. The Octopura ducks, the stiff tail sticking out. But there's a few things that we gotta think about. Ruddy duck has a big stiff tail. Like it is almost sticking up as high as the head in some cases, if you see in this photo. And this one is not a very big bill, not a very big tail at all. Proportionally, this one says black scoter to me over ruddy duck. Ruddy duck is a smaller bodied duck. It's got a thinner neck. It's got a smaller head, a kind of a bigger slope down the front from the forehead all the way to the bill.
Proportionally, it's got a bigger bill.
Yeah, proportionally, absolutely. It's just because the body on a black scoter is so big. Like that is a big round bird, and that's something that really stands out when you see scoters sitting on the water. It's just how big their body is and how small their bill is comparatively. Not the case with ruddy duck, which is, as we know, massive bill, small bodied duck, very very tiny little duck actually, and all told. And which is why that didn't look like a ruddy duck to me.
It is crazy how small ruddy ducks are, and birds in general. When you get them in the hand, I mean, a ruddy duck just it fits in the palm of your hand.
You expect,
you can hold a ruddy duck like this, whereas a black scoter, you're going to need both hands for that.
You need both hands. It's a two-hander for sure. I used to volunteer at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences preparing bird specimens. Right, so you get the specimens into the cooler. Someone brings them in. They get hit by a car, whatever. And you prepare them into study skins, right? when you've got those birds in your hand, you realize how tiny they are. I had an Audubon shearwater, for instance, and you're out on a boat and you think, oh, that's a big, long-winged bird, broad-winged bird. Look at the way it's moving over that water. That's a good-sized bird. You get it in your hand, and the thing is the size of a robin. Like it's
Right.
ridiculous how small some of these birds are when you see them up close. And ruddy duck is definitely in that genre.
Yeah, and that's a common theme that we talk about here. Is it is unless you have something to directly compare size to. Now in this comp here, I made the ruddy duck and the black scoter. So we have a ruddy duck on top and a
Massive
black
ruddy duck.
scoter, which is our bird in question here
That's close
below.
right.
I made them the same size so that the overall proportion and everything seemed equal, because in the field when they're by themselves, you really can't tell how big a bird is. Sorry.
Both.
I mean, just last week, I was sitting in my back porch, and a bird flew up in the tree that's halfway down the block from me, and I'm like, whoa, what the heck is that? And I thought it's got to be a thrush. It's something. Mm-hmm. It was a junco. I totally. I mean, it just appeared huge.
Yeah.
And
when they get their wings
wasn't.
spread out sometimes.
And then the same thing with like sharp-shinned hawk. Sharp-shinned hawk is tiny. It's the size of a robin. Anyway. Yeah. So yes, the bird in question in front here is a black scoter, compared to a ruddy duck there in the back. So you can see the proportional difference, shape, size, and as we like to say here, gestalt.
This also kind of nicely illustrates the tone in the body as well. Black scoter is a very dark bird and dark all over. Ruddy duck, even when it's mostly dark, does tend to have a little bit of white spots, kind of speckling, various inconsistencies in the color across the body that make it look a little bit lighter. But when you see a scoter out there, like it is charcoal gray.
Right.
Very dark bird, pretty much uniformly across the body, as you can see in these birds, even when the light is poor.
Susan Nelson says a junco looks huge compared to a chipping sparrow. Yeah, they're kind of chunky.
Chippies are surprisingly small.
They're chunky little birds. Chippies are slim little guys.
Yeah.
Elise May says we are waiting to book As a Young Birder by Greg Neise. Yeah, I've been working on that for a while.
We'll just take the transcript of all these.
There we go.
What's this bird's, and eventually you'll have something, Greg.
Another swimming bird. Imagine that.
Look at that duck.
That's a monster.
Long.
I want to go. All right, I want to go back. I want to go back here, just so we can get the overall shape. How even these two birds, we've got this is a large sea duck in the front and a small pond duck, marsh duck in the back. But now compare the body shape of these two to that.
Yeah, very different. Very long body on this bird, very long and slender. Sits pretty low on the water, especially compared to that black scoter, which sits pretty high, almost like a rubber ducky. This guy's going to be pretty low. You're not going to see a whole lot over the top, and of course that big old head with a dagger bill sitting out the front. Not too many birds shaped like this for sure. This is a unique one.
Yeah, well, so the long body, the dagger-shaped bill, the big chunky head, all of that really kind of steers us to two groups of birds, one being the loons and the other being the grebes. And
those are divers to our UK.
Oh yeah, divers to our UK friends.
They do dive. It's a good name.
I think, except for maybe some of the larger, well, there's really only one grebe that even approaches a loon in shape, and that's rednecked.
Yeah.
And they don't have bodies that are long like this. Even a redneck grebe is kind of compact and round.
Yeah.
Grebes tend to look like softballs with necks and heads on the water. They're just kind of these round globular things, and they're not long and kind of like a battleship, like a loon.
You could battleship. That's a good way to think. I feel like you could fit a grebe into a square. Right? You draw a square around a grebe, and it's as tall as it is long, more or less.
Yep.
Whereas that's not the case with a loon. Loon is a long, low rectangle. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
If we're
So
doing ship comparisons, a grebe is a schooner. It's a yacht.
oh, nice. Where's Carrie Samus when we need to talk about sailboats?
Yeah.
So we're talking about loons. We've basically got 3 species of loons to deal with in most of the ABA area, and most of the world.
Well, the northern hemisphere, I should say.
Yeah.
Southern hemisphere loons? There's no southern hemisphere loons.
There aren't any.
There's only 5 loon species, and we got them all. We got them all here.
Yeah. So we can eliminate the one with the biggest and the blockiest head and bill, yellow-billed loon, because this bird clearly does not have a yellow bill.
It'd be a very rare bird in San Antonio, Texas. That is.
Well, it would, but actually, I think there is a record or 2 from Texas.
Oh, I would not doubt it. They show.
And this year, who knows? But yes, I mean,
white-billed diver to our friends over the
white-billed diver to our friends across the pond.
I mean, it invites a conversation about the difference between yellow and white, but all right, fine.
It is a horn-billed diver. Oh well, there's billed, but yes, that is a very aptly named bird, especially the UK version of the name, because it has a yellowish white bill and it dives a lot. So all right, so we can get that one out of the way. Red-throated loon, we can get out of the way too. Red-throated loon is a much paler bird. Its face is usually pure white in this plumage or close to it. It's got a very thin bill and it's a much slimmer bird. It is the smallest of our loons.
It's much more like a fillet knife than a steak knife. Trying to think of a thin knife.
So really, knife, right? In most of the ABA area,
very skinny bill.
You see a bird like this. And the conundrum is going to come down to 2 species, and that is common loon and Pacific loon. And so here we see those 2 species, and they're quite similar, but really the differences are pretty. It's not all that hard, but again, these birds generally tend to present at a distance on some of the worst days possible. It's not very often that you get looks
bobbing
like this.
Up. If they're out on the ocean, they're like bobbing up and down between the waves. Like you see,
you just see a head come up and then go down.
Second, and then it drops, and then it's like when you find it again, it's like 100 meters the other direction. They're very difficult to watch on the ocean. It's a little
so on the top here we have the bird in question, which is a common loon, in winter plumage, and on the bottom here we have a Pacific loon in similar plumage. First thing you can notice is the difference in the size and shape of the bill.
It's true. It's noticeable. Common loon, great northern diver to our friends on the other side of the pond, where this is actually would be this is relevant content to birders across the northern hemisphere, Greg. Yeah,
I'm not laughing that you're doing. I'm not laughing that you're doing it. I'm chuckling in appreciation of your perseverance here.
That's right. Hey, don't start if you're not going to finish.
Exactly.
Common loon is a much longer bird, much longer, much lower. That tends to have a little bit of a bigger head and a bigger bill. You can see the gestalt differences in this bird. I really cannot stress enough that is, frequently very obvious.
Jizz to our UK birders.
Yeah.
You can see the difference in the head shape right away. You've got that kind of steep forehead, blocky head with the bill shape, that big. It's a, like you said, a dagger-like bill. It's a wide-bladed knife, and the bird is just big and hefty, thick with 2 C's. It is just a big. It is just a big bird. I've held a couple in my hands, and they're hefty, they're massive birds.
Yeah, I've picked up some specimens, and they are large.
The Pacific loon
about a 2-hander. That's a 3-hander, Greg.
The Pacific loon. The Pacific loon that we see in front here, again, the bill shape,
dainty.
the rounded head,
positively dainty.
It gives it a different look, but also notice the neck, you see that there's a chin strap there. That is not a fold or something like that. That is actual feathering. That's a really good mark for Pacific loon when you can see it, but a lot of times you can't see it.
That's true. And I will generally say for every Pacific loon that I have seen, and frequently, as you say, in very bad conditions, on the other side of a lake, or 500 meters out, 1,000 meters out off a pier, what really stands out is the shape difference, and also the hood. So it's got this clean.
That's where I was going.
Hood. Yeah. You don't always see the chin strap. You do always see that clean gray hood, like it's wearing a hoodie sweatshirt, and it is clean, and the demarcation on the neck is very obvious. Whereas on a loon, it is muddy, it is messy. On a common loon, common loon, I should say, is muddy and messy, and goes all the way around the front. But Pacific loon is that pattern on the face. Even if you can't see the chin strap, you can see the pattern on the head and neck, and that really stands out.
Absolutely. And that and the just overall size and shape, if you're out on a lake or something and there's a bunch of loons, a Pacific loon will stand out as being smaller and slimmer, a little more gracile. But yeah, that sort of the same as a sharp-shinned hawk. It's got that sort of very sharply demarked gray half of the neck and head, and the difference between the throat and the back of the neck is very easy to see.
That's what I look for, is the throat and the back of the neck. That line on the neck. That's what you're going to see. And when you throw a red-throated loon into the equation too, which can look more like a Pacific loon than a common loon frequently, it's really white. Like, it is white all the way above the eye, all the way back down the neck. It's like the neck is mostly white. It's usually got like a little black or a gray line right there down the nape. But the neck is almost entirely white, and you're taught gracile, man. That thing is practically slender as a runway model. Like, it is a skinny.
Oh man, I thought you were gonna come up with a fillet knife or something, a boning knife. No.
Yeah, and someone mentions on Facebook, do they sit lower in the water? That's a good question. I don't know. I think it sits lower in the water just because its body is smaller.
Yeah, I think it's an impression. I think it's an impression because the bird is slimmer. But getting back to red-throated, a red-throated loon, once you get familiar with them, like Nate said, they're very pale. The back is paler. They tend to swim with their bill held up in the air at an angle.
That's true.
Which
is funny because when they fly, they droop their head below their body. They have a very distinctive in-flight profile as well that is different than common loons. But
maybe it's because they're tilting their bill up so they have to drop their neck to go
droop it. Yeah.
Sort of like what was that? I'm having an old man moment here. The plane the supersonic plane.
Oh, the Concorde. Yeah.
The Concorde, like the Concorde with the nose that droops down. Yeah. Okay. More swimming birds.
Oh, I thought you said we weren't going to do gulls until January.
Okay. Well, he's given that one away. Yes, these are definitely seagulls. Although the person who posted, we got a few
species here.
The person who posted this,
which bird did they want?
Asked about the two dark birds in front and asked if they were Jaegers, which, I mean, they kind of look a little bit Jaegerish.
A little Jaeger, yeah.
So, I don't know. We'll start maybe with the flying bird right in our face there. First thing I notice is it's got a fair amount of black in the wingtips. It looks like it has a dark eye, and even though the photograph leaves a little bit to be desired, the thing with yellow-eyed gulls is if it has a yellow eye in a shot like this, you see it. I mean, it
makes the face look really open.
It makes it look totally different. And we can see in all three of the white-headed gulls, the two at the far right sitting on the water, all three of them have dark eyes. They kind of have longish bills. And the one that's flying there, we can see the legs pretty clearly, and they're kind of grayish, greenish,
Okay. I'll take your
putty
word for it.
colored. I'm not seeing any pink. And again,
No, exactly. I'll agree with you there. I'm thinking I'm seeing like a green yellow, but
Yeah, green, yellow,
not
green,
pink.
putty.
Not
you know.
pink.
But looking at the bird at the left, we can definitely see the color of its bill. Well, all of them really. So I mean, we can tell that we can make out the colors here. So all of that, the dark eye, the kind of yellow, green, putty colored legs, the long bill, and a little extra black in the wingtips, that all adds up to California gull. So all of the four gray backed, gray mantled, white headed gulls, these are all California gulls, which in California, yeah, we'd expect that.
Yeah, it's reasonable.
So what about the other four birds?
4 birds? Which birds are we looking? Oh,
we got
I didn't see that.
3
I
on the
didn't see
water.
the one in front of the 2 California gulls.
Yeah.
On the right. I didn't notice that bird. All right, so what we've got here are birds that are looking quite different. Let's do what appear to be the adult bird, or at least the adult bird that we can see really well. The far left bird that looks like it has mostly grayish body, kind of lead colored body, dark tail. Can't tell much about the eye. Looks like it has a red bill.
Yeah, it's got a red bill with a black tip.
Dark legs. Yeah.
Black
Very
feet.
unique looking gull. Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean it's overall kind of a nice soft gray, with that black tail with the white terminal band and a red bill and that soft gray color and the black legs. That's slam dunk. I mean, you go flipping through your field guide, you're going to come up with one bird and only one bird that looks like this, and that is Heermann's gull.
Heermann's gull, EEN.
Yeah, which is it's an interesting species that breeds in Mexico, in the islands off. I'm having another old man moment.
Off Baja.
The Baja.
Yeah, the
Baja
Coronado
Peninsula.
Islands, I believe, is where most of them are.
And winters nearby, and then winters all the way up the Pacific coast to Seattle. Yeah, it's one of our most unique gulls.
Cool gull.
And it is. And they're back. It was getting worrisome for them, but they seem to be back. There were a few years where there were no juvenile birds, or extremely few juvenile birds being seen, and it got a little concerning. But now there's more or less normal numbers of juvenile birds, I believe, which is kind of a lead-in to the 2 dark birds sitting there on the water.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so why aren't they Jaegers? Well, for starters, well, that's a good question. I'm trying to figure out why they aren't Jaegers. The tail looks awfully short. They don't have kind of
Jaegers tend to show.
Jaegers. They tend to be a little bit smaller Jaegers typically than most
Jaegers
gulls.
are
I don't
smaller.
think people appreciate that Jaegers are smaller than most gull species.
Yeah, and these are California gulls, and these birds are smaller than the California gulls, it appears. But Jaegers, even the dark varieties, dark morphs, they have more pattern on the back. And they have more, there's more going on. These birds are just kind of overall just kind of this dusky charcoal gray with this kind of bright 2-toned bill. And again, just very dark. And, you'll notice on the bird flying, the adult Heermann's gull on the left, the white edge on the secondaries and how it terminates there at the bottom with kind of big white ends on the tertials, which are at the very bottom of the wing above the base of the tail. And we see the bird sitting on the water immediately in front of the 2 California gulls. It's the same color gray as the bird flying, and it's got the white. You can see the white on the end of the bird's body there. So that's another adult Heermann's gull. And it's the same size as these 2 other birds in the water, so that gives us a clue too. Yeah, I think we just got cut right to the chase. These are 2 juvenile
young Heermann's
gulls. Actually, I don't believe this is juvenile plumage. I think this is first cycle.
Yeah, that's why I never
Heerman's
use the
gull.
term juvenile, because I never know if I use it correctly.
Yeah.
Just say immature, subadult, all those other ways to kind of get around making a statement as to the bird's specific age.
Yeah, so we've got California
Cross.
gulls and Heerman's gulls here from Cambria, California. We're going to push on because it's already 12:45.
Lord.
Time flies when you're having fun. All right, here's another swimming bird.
I don't see its webbed feet, Greg. I don't know if I'm going
I don't either.
go for that one. The size of the concentric circles of on the water suggests that this is not a large bird. The water
fact that
droplets.
it's in a bird bath.
Around it. Is it? It could be a mountain pool. I have no idea.
It could be a mountain pool. And actually, yeah, it's got the spiky bill and it's round. It could be a grebe.
There's no neck to speak of.
No neck. That's true. Yeah, so this bird is telling us its name. And it's telling us its name in a way that we rarely get to see, which is kind of cool.
I don't think I've ever seen. I think I've only ever.
I've never seen it. I've maybe seen it once.
Eponymous. Is it eponymous? No, that's not the word I'm looking for. Yeah, maybe it is eponymous. The eponymous crown on this bird only ever once, and it was like a bird that was completely soaked, like this bird.
Yes, that's when
so
you see it.
This is a warbler, y'all. This is a small bird with a spiky little bill, and it's all wet, so we don't really get a real good sense of the shape. It's got all its front feathers fluffed out. Looks like it's shaking its wings there in the back. We caught an action shot here, but the head, the bill, all that says warbler to me. There aren't too many warblers that are kind of all over green like this without any other sort of streaking or pattern anywhere else on the body. So the only pattern I can see is that little bit of apricot there right above its eye, which suggests this is in fact an orange-crowned warbler. And it's orange-crowned warbler season. They're a very late migrant, so they should be settling into place across the southeast United States right now.
So why isn't it a ruby-crowned kinglet?
Why isn't it a ruby-crowned kinglet? Well, the bill doesn't look right for a ruby-crowned kinglet because it's straight and sharp at the tip, where ruby-crowned kinglet usually has a little bit of a hook at the end of its bill. And the eye ring is not right for ruby-crowned kinglet. A ruby-crowned kinglet usually has a complete white eye ring, whereas this is an eye, like two eye arcs, essentially. It looks like it's broken right at the front and at the back. And they're not white. It's kind of the same kind of yellowish brown ochre color that we see across the bird's front. So that's another reason why it's not a ruby-crowned kinglet.
Yep. And so as I said, this is an orange-crowned warbler, and one of the very rare pictures of the species where you can actually see the orange crown.
John Anderson says, no mountains in Florida. I guess he's speaking to my suggestion that this might be a mountain pool. And I would say to him, what about Space Mountain?
There you go. There you go. Don't mess
Whether
with Swick.
Whether it has pools on it,
you come at Swick, you better be ready with facts.
Actually, I do think that if you took like the highest points in Florida, Space Mountain is like number 3 on that.
It probably is. In Florida. Okay, so I tend to try to pick one every time if I can find it where we're gonna disagree or throw our hands up. So
quit my Zoom if I get angry.
The bird in question is the brown bird in the center, and it's in the inset there again with its head turned toward us.
Okay.
Same bird with its head turned toward us to give us a little bit different view of it, I should say. We're going to cut right to the chase here. The two black and white birds in the front are buffleheads. We've got a male on the right with its
buffalo-headed ducks
with its unique pattern that is more or less unmistakable. The only thing it could be mistaken for is hooded merganser, and once you've seen one of each, you'll never mistake them again. The little black and gray duck with the little white face patch is a female bufflehead. The bird to the right, above the there's two birds there, but above the buffy, that's a pretty straightforward lesser Scaup. We can see the peak on the head. the bill shape, the bill size. This is a young male, it appears, lesser Scaup.
Agree.
But now this
are we gonna
bird in the
disagree on, Greg?
center. What about this bird in the center?
Whew. All right. So I would just like to say before I start talking about this bird, how glad I am to have that second inset photo, because I think that tells the story more than just about anything. Because when I look at that inset photo, when I'm looking at Scaups and I'm trying to determine which Scaup I want to scoop, the thing that I really like to look at is the nail at the tip of the bill. I think that is a field mark that is generally more, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? It's one that stands out more than just about any other field marks, because a lot of the field marks that we use to identify Scaup can be kind of mushy. I'm talking about like head shape. I'm talking about iridescence color, which is more or less a worthless field mark for the most part.
Yeah.
A Scaup are very active. They're a diving duck. They're going up and down in the water all the time. That head shape changes all the time. But one thing that doesn't change is the bare parts. And on the bare parts, we're looking at the tip of the bill, the nail at the tip of the bill. And by the nail, I mean the spot of black that is on the tip of a Scaup's bill. On a lesser Scaup, it tends to be quite narrow, limited to the very, very middle of the bill. On a greater Scaup, it is typically quite wide and will take up the entire front of the bill. On the main photo that we're looking at, I really cannot make much of a distinction about it. There's some things about it that sort of lean greater to me, but on that inset, I am looking at the nail on the bill, and even though the photo is a little bit soft, it does look like it. I mean, you can tell me if I'm wrong, Greg. It does look like that nail is taking up the entire width of the front bill. And
I would agree.
That, along with the kind of rounder body, like, again, that's not a definitive field mark, but it's one of those kind of field marks that I wouldn't base an entire identification on it. But if it's there and everything else is sort of leaning in that direction, then that I would consider it. And also, the white between the eye and the bill tends to be more evident in a greater Scaup. To be kind of mushy. I don't know.
I think if you see some white on the auricular, that's a somewhat reliable thing to lean you
towards. That's the word I'm looking for. Good Lord.
Yeah.
I don't know why I couldn't come.
That's all right. Tim Callback says 100% agree with Scaup species. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong.
No, you're not wrong, Tim. So here in this comp, we've got the bird in question on the left. I've got two greater Scaup on top and two lesser Scaup below. When you look at the four birds aligned there, you can really get a feel for the gestalt, for the shape and everything. I mean, you can see the greater Scaup has a bigger bill. It's a heftier bird. It's got a thicker neck and it's not as gracile. You can see the
peak. That's the second time you've used gracile in this.
Have I really?
In this yeah.
Ah, all right. Well,
it must be your word of the day.
I don't know. Now you.
I mean to call you.
Now
out.
you made me self-conscious.
I totally messed up your flow.
Now you made me self-conscious.
You're on a roll.
But you can see the difference in the what you're looking for when you're looking at Scaup. And you can also see how the bird in question is kind of like right in the middle.
It's a tweener, yeah.
And doesn't lean one way or the other real hard. And this is one of those birds where I tend to lean greater on this bird. And I think Nate,
that's where I am.
The nail on the end of the bill that we saw in the last image kind of pushed me that direction.
Identification.
Yeah. That kind of pushes me that way. However, if we had more better images of this bird that showed it to definitely be a lesser, I would be like, yeah, okay, because sometimes you just can't tell.
Yeah, sometimes you can't tell. That's exactly right. And I'd say that that percentage of birds that you'll never be able to identify might get smaller as you become a more experienced birder, but it's never going to reach zero. Like, there's always going to be Scaup that are going to give you trouble.
Yeah.
And
Tim Callback. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to go back here for just a second, because Tim Callback says side by side graders can stand out as larger, and that's true. But here it is side by side with a definite lesser Scaup. which is one of the reasons why I was like, it just.
No, I agree, and it does look a little like that. But you can see the kind of differences in the head shape on this bird, and if those birds are acting similarly, which is a thing that would be more evident in the field. There's no way we can tell here. Then I would give the head shape a little bit more credit than I might otherwise. I mean, as you said, like Greg, I think this is greater, but I would not argue if you had drop dead evidence to the contrary. So,
all right. So the bird here in question at the top left is a Scaup. I'm leaning greater. Scaup. Nate is leaning greater. Here in the comp, we've got 2 lesser Scaup, and up at the top there, we've got 2 greater Scaup. So you can kind of get a feel for the difference of these 2 species. And as Tim points out, when you get them side by side, usually, I mean, even in this comp, you could see that the greater is it's a heavier bodied bird.
Yeah, it's like wider too. Like if you're above it, like, and so this is my experience, because one of the places where people always find greater Scaup inland are a bunch of ponds near the Raleigh-Durham airport. So if you're ever out needing the Scaup for your, Wake County list, that's where to go. But so you park on the side of the road and you're kind of looking down into these ponds, and you're kind of above the birds frequently, and you can see that greater Scaup does appear to be like a wider bodied bird, generally speaking. And that does help. But you're not always going to get that kind of angle on it. And yeah. But yeah, it is heavier. I'll just second Greg's comment that it's a heavier bird.
So it is that time of the year.
Oh yeah.
And, if you love what we do and you like programs like this,
heck, if you just tolerate what we do.
If you tolerate us, exactly. I mean, nobody's forcing them to come.
If you get 3 minutes of lucidity from what we do, please consider joining the ABA.
And this time of year is, when we do a major fundraising push to kind of get us through the winter, and we really rely on you guys and appreciate the support. If you go to aba.org, you will see this graphic on the homepage. Just click it and punch that donate button until it feels good. And if you're not a member, take the opportunity and join us, because we'd love to have you.
Absolutely. aba.org/join. Not only do you get the knowledge that you're contributing to the birding community, you also get a lot of great magazines. Our magazines are fantastic. You get a lot of great discounts to some of our partners, like Beauty of Books, Cornell Lab of Ornithology, OM, which is Olympus Cameras.
Olympus?
Like amazing 10% discount to ABA members, which depending on what you purchase, and camera stuff is not
That's some real
cheap,
cash.
obviously. Like you're paying for your ABA membership just like right there in buying a lens or a body or whatever. So please consider. Greg Gilson says later Scaup or guesser Scaup. I am totally stealing that to use in whatever Scaup identification.
Don't give him fuel, people. Don't give him fuel.
So thank you for that. Please consider joining us. We'd love to have you. We're a membership organization. We come join the club.
Yes, and speaking of club, if you are a member, be sure to pop into ABA Community, which is call it our social media experience for ABA members, where we discuss all kinds of things. You can throw pictures at us, just if you have a picture of a bird you can't identify, or anything you want to discuss. What's that?
It's growing.
It is growing. It's growing. There's a lot of fun going on there. Wait, all right. Chris Ortega says the top of the highest spire on Space Mountain is less than 100 feet below Florida's highest land elevation. Boy, somebody hit the Google fast on that one.
What I'm saying, it's like the 3rd highest peak in Florida.
Anyways, we would love to see you at Community, and it continues to grow, and it's a great thing. So yeah, get on over to aba.org/community, and if you're not a member, aba.org/join. We would love to have you as part of the club. I think that's just about it for us, isn't it, Nate?
That's all we got. We'll be back in a couple weeks. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy American Thanksgiving to those of you on this side of the pond and this side of the 48th parallel.
Border.
We'll be around. Hope you enjoy your one bird-related holiday of the year.
And rock on November, because this year it's awesome. Get out there and see some birds.